Hello and welcome everyone to Ukrainian Blockchain Hub. I am Maria Vovchuk, and today I'm interviewing Richard Titus, who is the board member at Creative Destruction Lab, which is one of the founding members of Libra. So Richard, nice to have you here. How are you?
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much. Yes, we call the Creative Destruction Lab the biggest accelerator you've never heard of. Outside the US, it's one of the most successful in artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, space. We have an astronaut and a space stream, and then we've just launched Blockstream stream last year. And as of this year, we're the only academic and only accelerator partner of the Libra cryptocurrency.
So as you understood, today we will talk about Libra because a lot of has been happening over the past week, especially. So is it true, one of the latest news and announcements, that Libra might never be launched? This is according to Facebook's disclosure to the SEC. To be precise, they claimed in their quarterly report to the US Securities and Exchange Commission that there cannot be assurance that Libra or our other associate products and services will be made available in a timely manner or at all. So is it correct that after all this time when Libra was heavily under attack at congressional hearings, it won't be launched at all?
Well, I think that's, I wouldn't say it's going to or not going to. I think what Facebook is saying, and I don't work for Facebook, so I'm just opining here, my private opinion. But I think that, and what David Marcus said on the stand when he was testifying in front of Congress, is that their goal, the goal of Libra, is to really embrace and work with regulators globally to make the cryptocurrency work. And if that proves impossible, then they're not going to launch it. So it's really a respectful deference to the regulators who do have a very key role in this process of rolling out a global cryptocurrency.
That's true, but there might be possible two scenarios. One, Libra will be heavily scrutinized by regulators, and as the result, it will be highly regulated, or it won't exist at all.
Well, I think there's more than two scenarios. I think there's a million scenarios. So it's sort of a spectrum. Yeah, no. So the spectrum is over here. It never happens because too many regulators and they have to go back to the drawing board. But I think that we saw today the announcement that Walmart is going to launch a cryptocurrency. So I think the dogs are out of the barn, and stable coins, cryptocurrencies, and tokenization and decentralization are things that are out in the world. And I think these are the drivers of innovation. And Congress and the regulators know this globally. What they're looking for is to make sure there's a proper respect of authority and understanding how to prevent things like terrorism and money laundering. And those are the things that people are working on. So I think the spectrum is over here is never. I think that's a highly unlikely scenario. And I think launch in every country in the world at the same time, boom, magic, also unlikely. And so what we'll see is a cautious, steady rollout of the protocol and currency over time in markets as the regulators become comfortable with the framework and with the foundation and the organization.
But will they actually comfortable at all? I mean,
I think that, as I said before, it's done. like if you don't like Libra, you really don't like blockchain and Bitcoin. And blockchain and Bitcoin are already very well distributed.
Yeah.
And that as Americans, and something I've told my representatives and people I have quite a bit of contact with members of Congress, is that you need to embrace this because it's the future. If America doesn't invest, we simply lose. We run the risk of not being part of the next wave of transformation. Transformation has happened to the newspaper business, the media business, the music business, the libraries. Everything is becoming, as my friend Robert Tursick says, vaporized. And you can't stop this. You have to embrace and extend. And that's really what we're doing today.
Okay. But the question now is still when it will happen. Because, for example,
that's a great question.
Yeah, Facebook claimed that it still expects to launch the Libra digital currency in 2020. But after what is happening now during congressional hearings, may we expect a delay, and probably a long delay in this case?
I don't know. That's asking me to predict what the U.S. government's going to do. I think that everyone was taken by surprise by the announcement, which is, of course, the point of a surprise announcement. And I think, Libra, and remember, one thing to remember is Libra is not Facebook. If Facebook is a founding member, it's one of the 27 organizational founding members, but there are there's more than that. And there are many partners at the table, and all of us have a vested interest in seeing this succeed. And So we are really, we're eager to do it, but we're not over eager. And it's a global currency. So the US is just one of the 180 markets that we intend to launch the product in. And I think that it's an important market. It's important to have this conversation and this process. Mm-hmm. But I'm optimistic personally. And I think as an organization, we're continuing forward for now.
But as you mentioned, the US is not the only country which might be using Libra in the future. But
yeah, no, look, the British government has already openly discussed giving us access to treasury access, which is actually what central banks have in most countries. Mm-hmm. It's not formally agreed yet, but I mean, there's lots of discussion and excitement. I think the excitement level is higher in countries where central banking is a challenge and where they're looking to Libra as being, a mechanism for driving international economic growth. And again, I would really hate to see the U.S. left out of that. As a blockchain entrepreneur myself, and having been involved in more than 27 companies in my life, if the U.S. regulator stops us from being able to make things happen, we just simply will build our businesses in Switzerland and Slovenia.
Yeah, because it's true. Like I remember that there was an announcement that the congressional, if I'm not mistaken, 1 minute. Mm-hmm. 1 second. After the congressional hearing, David Marcus explained that Libra will not try to supersede the role of central banks.
Absolutely not. That would be a bad idea.
Yeah, but nevertheless, a coalition of consumer advocacy group, they has urged the 28 member companies of the Libra Association to quit Facebook-led project. So does this mean that still they are so not eager to accept it, despite all if, for example, really David Marcus and Facebook team will accept everything, they will try to figure out everything that the US Congress would be satisfied, still there is a possibility that it won't be in the US?
Well, it's interesting. So first of all, I think we have a very different read of what happened in the hearings. I think the hearings were part of the democratic process in America, and I was really pleased to see them. I mm-hmm. thought David did a great job of talking and speaking to the issues. And I think the questions from staff, some of the questions were kind of lame, but there were a lot of good questions and there was a lot of good discussion. And I think in many ways that was the beginning of the process. And there'll be a process of discussion. There may be some amendments or changes. That may happen in more countries than just the US. And I think the rollout of Libra will be dependent in various territories with sort of those agreements and frameworks with regulators. But as I said, I think in many ways, Libra is a much stronger protocol to be supported by many regulators in many countries because it's better than what exists now. And again, to skip out on the innovation of blockchain in America would just be a foolish move.
Yeah, that's true. But there are worldwide regulators are not very happy with Libra, for example.
I don't think that's actually true. There's a lot of regulators who have embraced it wholesale. And then there's other regulators who are, cautious, as they should be. I think the larger economies where a large portion of their economy could be impacted by Libra are just going to take a very careful look. I think that's the right choice. I think there are other economies who look at this as a very, very powerful way. I was just in Jordan and I'm here in Israel. People in Israel are really excited. I met a guy who's actually built the first Libra wallet already last night for dinner.
What about China in India? Will be Libra targeted at these countries? Because actually, if we will see, they might be one of the most numerous users. There might be these countries might be potentially one of the most numerous users of Libra. But at the same time, it is banned there, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's funny. I was just about to say, I think cryptocurrency is still banned in India, although it's been a very confusing few weeks. So
yeah,
and China has, as sort of a love-hate relationship with blockchain and cryptocurrency in general, but overall, it's the biggest miner of crypto in the world. And I think the government there, again, is taking a cautious approach and looking at things as they go. We don't have a stated plan for either of those countries today. I think they're sort of lower on the list because, we need to sort of build this in countries where the on-ramps and off-ramps already exist with some of our partners, and really thinking about that first baby steps as we move to be a global framework for commerce and KYC and AML.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned just recently before that, if not the US, then the other countries, which ones are like, they are eager to accept Libra?
As I said, I'm here in Israel on holiday. Last night at dinner, 2 of the 7 people at my dinner are working on Libra projects. Has already built the first Libra wallet.
You also mentioned about the UK.
Yeah. Well, Britain, I think, is cautiously optimistic, but again, their regulators are embracing and talking about the process, and there will be, I'm sure, some comments and input from them. But, the Bank of England has also overall been very open to discussions around giving sort of banking access at the highest levels to cryptocurrency providers if they meet certain tests. And I think that's right. I mean, Great Britain and I lived in London for 7 years. I feel like it's my second home. Is really embraced a future that has blockchain and cryptocurrencies in it, as long as they're not fraudulent scammy coins, but really are things that are building a future economic for global business.
As we've been talking previously about the terms when Libra might be launched, just recently I've heard another statement by Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan. We are going to talk about Libra 3 years from now, and he doesn't see any like possible background to talk about it today. How would you answer to that?
Well, Jamie Dimon also said that he thought blockchain was a fad and Bitcoin was a fad and would never work. And of course, JP Morgan is one of the largest purchasers of Bitcoin right now in the open markets. So I think that we have to look a bit askance when turkeys vote for canceling Christmas.
I see. As you mentioned also previously, that other technological giants, they are planning to create their own cryptocurrencies.
I don't know if I would call Walmart a technological giant.
Well, not only, but I mean, Samsung.
It's a retailer. Yeah, it's a big move. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, but still, a big company, Samsung, is planning actually to do its own crypto. So
yeah, I used to work there.
Do you see that those regulators will still try to press further similar projects to Libra as well?
Well, it's really interesting, right? So I'm old enough to have lived through a few waves of transformation, right? So I had my first internet connection before I was in high school, which is very, very rare in America. I'm a bit older than you think. And I remember when I was in college, the dorms were going to ban internet access because it was slowing down the school network. And I thought that's not going to work very well. And when I was in the newspaper business, we wanted to turn the website off when we hadn't sold all of our papers yet, which is kind of a crazy idea. And I said to them, listen, why don't we just make Nets newspapers, because the digital newspaper is faster, cheaper, and better. I think that trying to impair or slow progress and innovation has never worked really well. What you want to do is build guardrails and frameworks for innovation. And the state of Wyoming here in America, led by a woman named Caitlin Long, has done a really good job of building a set of regulations and very modern thinking around cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all the sort of regulations around them to create a sandbox, and then a framework also for evolving that sandbox over time as businesses and industry embrace the technology and new needs or new ideas or new problems arise.
What is Libra to you personally?
That's interesting. So I wrote a blog about this actually called Libra is a Rising Tide That Lifts All Boats. So I've been a blockchain holder and still a Bitcoin holder since almost the very beginning. I never took it very seriously because I'd seen so many digital cash like eCash and some of the other early digital money things fail. But I was fascinated by the blockchain. And then at some point I realized we'd reached sort of mass distribution, sort of stage one, if you will. And for me, what Libra is if we're speaking metaphorically, like the internet, when I was using the internet, you had to have a pretty solid embrace a skill set around technology just to get your computer on the internet. And then this thing called AOL in America happened, and AOL suddenly made it so anyone could be on the internet, sort of. And I think Libra in many ways is that sort of starter, a better UI, better experience blockchain for the masses to have their first sort of blockchain cryptocurrency experience.
I see. So would you accept your salary in Bitcoin?
I would, absolutely.
Would you accept your salary in Libra?
I would, absolutely.
So do you think it will be like one of the possible ways, instead of dollar, not only in the US, but in other countries, which we mentioned before, use Libra and Bitcoin as not only payment method, but also as a payment method as well?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, actually. So I think one of the many use cases where Libra is super powerful, I always use is sort of just basic remittance and invoicing. So we live in a global economy, and yet we have these arbitrary borders that are established between 1,000 and 180 million or 380 million people, sort of as the smallest and the biggest country in the world, that are arbitrary. And then we build these fake money principles of sort of consensus around paper money and valuation. And we're trying to run a global business with this crazy, pillared architecture. And so what's going to happen, I think, is you're going to start to see people transacting in Libra and other cryptocurrencies because they're stable, reliable stores of value. And at the very least, they're agreed valuation point at the point of transaction. I mean, I'll never forget, I was in Colombia and I needed some money sent to me. It took 6 weeks and I lost 10% of value on the way. That's insane. I have a friend, I hired some developers in Bulgaria, and this is a long time ago. And it was like, I would wire them the money and sometimes they get it in a day and sometimes in 2 months. And there was no sense of why it happened faster or slower. It just was completely random.
Okay, so there are, like, for now 28 member companies of the Libra Association so far. But
I think it's 27, but yeah.
Yeah, but in the future, there might be 100. Do you have some news? Have you heard maybe some other companies which are have prepared already $10 million and are eager to join Libra Association?
Well, the $10 million was actually CDL. We didn't have to pay that because we're an academic institution and not for profit. But what's really important, I think, is this is a journey and we're building a global ecosystem. So I think there'll be conversations about adding great partners over time. And the rest of the members will help evaluate those partners and look at them and look at how we grow the ecosystem. But I think a great example I always point out is both Uber and Lyft are in the ecosystem. And that's really a statement to the fact that this is not partisan. This isn't like a commercial thing where you're trying to get one group over another to succeed. It's really about embracing the totality of the internet and of digital businesses and really businesses of the future.
Okay, Richard, thank you so much for your interview. It was interesting to listen to you, and I hope that we will have an interview in the future. Maybe you will share some other fresh news, what is happening with Libra Association.
Well, the thing I can share like right now is Creative Destruction Lab, the accelerator I'm part of. We have just kicked off our blockchain stream for the fall and had Libra. There was sort of a Libra Academy as part of that. And we taught people about the blockchain and about the testnet. And I believe, we are the only accelerator building a cohort of companies on Libra. So that's kind of really exciting. And I don't think there's anyone else talking about that or doing that. So you should definitely share that with your viewers.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. Today I was interviewing Richard Titus, who is one of the actually board members at Creative Destruction Lab, which is one of the board members of Libra Association. Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. It was nice to have you, and see you in the future.
Cheers.